You're chasing something. Maybe you don't call it chocolate. Maybe you call it security, or love, or the perfect moment when everything finally feels enough. But beneath it all, there's this quiet hum, this restless hunger, this belief that if you could just hold on to the right thing, you'd finally be complete. And every time you think you've found it, the relationship, the achievement, the fleeting peace, it dissolves in your hands, not because you failed, but because it was never meant to stay. All beings want to be happy. Lama Yeshe, a Tibetan Buddhist teacher beloved for his warmth and piercing clarity, once observed that nearly everything we do, from baking the smallest candy to launching the most sophisticated spacecraft, is driven by this single desire. We organize our entire existence around it. We build philosophies from it. We reach with open hands, believing this time will be different. But what if the very way we reach is what causes us to fall? Today, we simply invite ourselves to rest here and recognize the difference between grasping and receiving. This contemplation offers a quiet space to understand how to release what was never ours to cage and return to a happiness that requires nothing outside yourself. These teachings are drawn from Lama Yeshe's book, When the Chocolate Runs Out, a collection of talks that blend warmth, wisdom, and direct insight into the nature of attachment and impermanence. Lama Yeshe used chocolate as a metaphor. He said, "We love chocolate, perhaps so much that at some level we might say, as long as there is chocolate, I will be happy." It's playful, disarming, and uncomfortably true. We attach our sense of wholeness to things, objects, people, achievements, feelings. We whisper to ourselves, if I just have this, I'll be okay. If I can keep this, I'll finally be safe. And then the chocolate melts. The job ends. The person leaves. The high fades. The moment passes. And we collapse inward, as if we've lost a part of ourselves. But here's what Lama Yeshe understood. It's not the absence of chocolate that makes us unhappy. It's our fixed ideas about what chocolate should be, our misunderstanding of its nature. You were never the chocolate. You were always the one tasting it. Impermanence isn't punishment. It's just the truth. Everything in this world, every sensation, every emotion, every shimmering moment of joy is changing. Always. The sunset you photograph is already gone. The song that moves you ends. The body you inhabit sheds itself cell by cell. This isn't tragedy. It's design. When we expect the impermanent to be permanent, we create our own suffering. We rage against the nature of reality itself. Think about your own life right now. How much of your anxiety comes from trying to freeze time? How much of your heartache comes from gripping what was already leaving? When you can understand this, Lama Yeshe taught, your relationship with the chocolate can change. And when you accept this fact with great ease, you will have absolutely no fear of anything. No fear of anything. Not because you've conquered the world, but because you've stopped asking it to be something it's not. You were never the chocolate. You were always the spaciousness that held it. Imagine holding water in your cupped hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it drains through your fingers. You're left with wet palms and the ache of losing. But if you hold gently, hands open, relaxed, the water stays. It reflects light. It nourishes. And when it eventually spills, you're not devastated, because you never pretended it was yours to own. That's the difference between attachment and presence. Attachment says, this must stay. I need this. Without this, I am nothing. Presence says, this is here. I'm grateful. And when it changes, I'll still be whole. Lama Yeshe was careful to clarify, there's nothing wrong with pleasure, nothing sinful about loving the world, finding beauty in it, enjoying what life offers. The problem isn't the chocolate, it's the delusion that the chocolate will complete you. When we cling to temporary things, as if they were eternal, we guarantee our own heartbreak. We create suffering where none needed to exist. But when we soften our grip, when we allow life to flow through us instead of trying to dam it up, something profound shifts. We stop living in fear of loss. We stop shattering every time something changes. We begin to rest in the current of existence instead of exhausting ourselves swimming against it. You were never the chocolate. You were always the awareness watching it come and go. Let's pause here. Let's practice. Close your eyes, if you're able, or let your gaze soften toward the ground. Bring to mind something you've been gripping tightly. Maybe it's a relationship you're terrified of losing, a dream you think defines your worth, a version of yourself you believe you must become to be acceptable. Don't analyze it, just feel it. Where does that gripping live in your body? Your chest, your jaw, your belly? Place your attention there. Now, without force, without judgment, imagine loosening your grip, not abandoning the thing you love, not declaring it meaningless, just softening your hold. What arises? Fear, perhaps. The primal panic of letting go. Or maybe relief. The exhale you've been holding for months. Stay with whatever comes. Breathe into that space. 3 slow breaths. Notice, even as you soften your grip, you're still here. You haven't disappeared. The ground beneath you hasn't vanished. The thing you love doesn't need to be imprisoned to be real, and you don't need to control it to be safe. When you're ready, open your eyes. In your actual day-to-day life, attachment doesn't announce itself with dramatic music. It shows up quietly, insidiously. You're stuck in traffic, and your whole nervous system ignites because your plan is being disrupted. You replay a conversation for the 100th time, torturing yourself with what you should have said. You scroll through old photos, aching for a version of your life that no longer exists, convincing yourself you were happier then. These aren't signs that you're broken. They're signs that you're human, but they're also invitations. Every time you notice yourself clinging to an outcome, to a feeling, to a story about how things should be, you have a choice. Tighten the fist or open the hand. Ask yourself, what if I didn't need this to be different? What if I could be steady, even as everything shifts? This isn't about becoming emotionally cold. It's about discovering that your well-being was never dependent on controlling the uncontrollable. Modern psychology confirms this ancient wisdom. Research on psychological flexibility, the capacity to adapt to change without collapsing, shows it's one of the strongest predictors of mental health. People who hold their desires lightly, who can release when needed, report significantly less anxiety and greater life satisfaction, not because they care less, but because they've stopped demanding that impermanent things become permanent. You were never the chocolate. You were always the one who could taste without needing to possess. Lama Yeshe pointed to something even deeper. He taught that beyond the fleeting pleasures of the sensory world, there is another kind of happiness waiting for you, a silent joy, a permanent one, not dependent on circumstances, not vulnerable to loss, not hostage to whether the chocolate appears or disappears. It emerges from your own mind, your own awareness, the part of you that watches the chocolate come and go, but itself never vanishes. This happiness is always available, right now, in this breath, wherever you are. You don't have to chase it. You have to stop running long enough to recognize it was never absent. This silent happiness arises from your own mind, Lama Yeshe said. Therefore, you must examine that mind. You must investigate and deeply know your own inner nature. What does that mean in practice? It means turning your attention inward, not as an escape from the world, but as a way of meeting it with more honesty. It means discovering the part of you that remains untouched, even when everything else is in flames. The awareness that contains all your experiences, but isn't imprisoned by any of them. That's where the chocolate never runs out, because that's where you realize you were never starving in the first place. So, I'll ask you directly, what's your chocolate? What are you gripping so tightly right now that your knuckles have gone white? Not theoretically, in your actual life, today. What are you convinced you need to be okay? That's actually keeping you from resting. If you feel called, share it below. Sometimes naming the thing is the first step toward releasing it, and this space is for that kind of honesty. But even if you don't share publicly, sit with the question. Let it work on you, because the truth is, you already know what needs to soften. Think of clouds moving across an open sky. You don't try to capture them. You don't grieve when they dissolve into blue. You watch. You appreciate the shapes they make, and you let them pass. That's the practice we're pointing toward. Not detachment in the sense of not caring, but detachment as freedom, as spaciousness, as the capacity to love without strangling, to hold life gently, to be fully present without demanding permanence, to enjoy the chocolate while it's here, and remain whole when it's gone, because you were never the chocolate. You were always the sky. Carry this with you today. Notice where you're gripping. Notice where you could breathe space into the holding. And if this contemplation stirred something in you, if it touched a place you've been avoiding or opened a question you've been afraid to ask, stay with us. We create spaces like this every week. Quiet, honest, unhurried. The depth is here. The silence is here. And so are you. That's all that's ever been needed. Breathe, rest, release. You were never the chocolate. You were always the one free enough to taste it.